more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
You see, guys, I'm confused. And that, is not a rarity, I suppose. Frequently, people have accused me of being confused, especially when I give one of my alleged hot takes. They say you seem to be confused about the issue at hand. But we're recording this on Thursday night, and it's going to be aired on Saturday morning on our YouTube channel. Saturday is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. So we don't want to work on the Jewish New Year. We're good Jews in that sense of the word. So we're recording this Thursday night. But I really don't know if I am supposed to say good evening, Winnipeg, good evening, Manitoba, or if I'm supposed to say good morning, Winnipeg, good morning, Manitoba. I'm very confused in this case. And your advice, please, gentlemen. Should I be saying good evening or should I be saying good morning? What do you think I should be saying?
I don't know. I think you should be saying good evening, considering that it's, what time is it right now? Almost 10 after 9.
Yeah.
Because that is the current time. And as you guys know, time is just a construct. So, I mean, I don't know if we're broadcasting.
Just like gender.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to touch that one. We're broadcasting this, I guess, from the past as opposed to the future. We're going back to the future here. So I think you could probably say, good evening, Manitoba, good evening, universe. But you could say good morning as well, considering people listening to this in the morning. But regardless, I'm happy that we're doing a show in lieu of Rosh Hashanah, as you mentioned, Drew. So for all those who celebrate, Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year to you too, fine gentlemen.
We have a captain to talk about, boys, and we have a little signing to talk about. And we got a lot of training camp coming up, so we have no shortage of things to talk about.
It's true.
Whatever, Drew. Just do whatever you want to do, man. You're the host.
Alrighty, thank you for carte blanche.
I want to jump in. I'm going to go with the opposite take. I actually think you need to go with good morning because this is actually going live in the morning, so people will be hearing it in the morning. So if you're saying at 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, which people think now is now, the point is they're going to hear you and they're going to be like, why is Drew saying good evening? It's going to be very confusing to those people listening. And so I would suggest maybe cover all bases.
Yeah,
do a little
here's
buenos
what I'm going to do.
noches, a little buenos tardes, buenos
dias.
dias.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good evening, Manitoba, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, taped on your YouTube channel as opposed to live on your YouTube channel on this Thursday evening / Saturday morning / whatever day and time zone you may be in, with Dave Manouk in the top right, with Ezra Ginsburg in the bottom middle. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next little while, maybe about an hour 15, somewhere around there, to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. It has already been a newsy week for the Winnipeg Jets. We discussed this on last Saturday's show, the idea of the Jets captaincy, and we were joined by Mike McIntyre, and we talked about it with Mike back then. But I have to say, it came more abrupt than I was expecting. I mean, we sort of knew that there was going to be a captaincy announcement made, but it happened very early on this week. If I recall correctly, it was Monday or Tuesday. The days sort of blend together, but the announcement came down early this week that it's Adam Lowry is the new Winnipeg Jets captain. A lot of people thought it was going to be Josh Morrissey. I was personally in the Adam Lowry camp, but Adam Lowry, nonetheless, the new Winnipeg Jets captain. I guess your initial impressions, Mr. Ginsburg, regarding the announcement of Adam Lowry as the new Jets captain.
As you mentioned, Drew, we knew that it was going to be Lowry or Morrissey. There wasn't going to be any surprise here. And, Lowry is a fine choice. Like, this is a guy, I think called him the loyal soldier, right? Like, this is a guy that we know what he does, right? Wins faceoffs, kills penalties, drops the gloves, chips in offensively. And just before we get more into this, like, the idea that you can't have a captain, who doesn't score 30 goals, right? Like, I think is ridiculous, right? Like, is Boone Jenner like necessarily like a superstar guy? Like, he's the captain of the Blue Jackets, for those who don't know, right? So,
right.
I mean, I just don't think that, and his dad was a captain as well of the Flames.
I just
was
saw
it the Flames or the Panthers, I forget, but he was a captain. And Dave Lowry, for anybody who watched him in that era, which obviously that's our generation, Dave Lowry was a fourth line grinder, right? So, I mean, that's ridiculous. That doesn't disqualify someone. You don't have to be a superstar. You don't have to be Connor McDavid or, Wayne Gretzky to be the captain of a team. So, look, it's a great choice. I mean, Lowry is a guy that's played his entire career in Winnipeg. Dave put this out on Twitter. It's hard to believe that he's played a decade with the Jets, right? It just makes us feel even older, right?
We don't need any help feeling older. Let me tell you about that.
I mean, there's a lot of gray hairs between the three of us to remind us of that, right, Drew? But yeah, I mean, look, Lowry's a good choice.
Beard hair for me, as opposed to the hair on top.
Absolutely, he's the captain of this team. He's a great choice, and I don't think Josh Morrissey, feels left out or anything like that. I don't think that there's any guilt that Adam Lowry feels Dave, because Morrissey doesn't get to see. I mean, what I think the focus is, and we talked about this on last weekend show, which was actually recorded live as opposed to this, which was recorded in the past. I mean, this is about a changing of the guard here. Blake Wheeler's gone. He's no longer a member of the Jets. Mm-hmm. And Lowry and Morrissey already had A's on their jersey last year, Dave. So, I mean, this is a natural progression for Lowry. This is a guy that I think, you would agree, on many occasions has come up with a big hit or a big goal or a fight when he needs to, standing up for his teammates, right? And even though fighting isn't a big part of hockey, every once in a while, you still see guys drop the mitts, right? So,
well,
I think he's a great choice.
Look at the True North organization. Who's a key member of the True North organization? Mike Keane, right? Mike Keane is plays a significant role in this organization. Former captain of the Montreal Canadiens. He was never a 30-goal scorer. He was never a driving offensive force for that Habs team. And of course, he was quickly traded to the Colorado Avalanche in the Patrick Waugh deal. But look internal to True North and see that they have within their ranks a former captain of an NHL team that was not an offensive driving force. And I said it on last week's show, Dave, that Lowry is not going to be counted on for offense. It's just not his game anymore.
4 goals in 5 playoff games, though, not too bad.
Well, but that sort of says maybe that when the game gets more tough, when the game gets more difficult, he's is able to find a way to elevate his game, which is something, of course, that the Jets this past season wilted when the game got more tough. So, look, if Josh Morrissey had been the choice, I think it would have been a fine choice as well. But I totally sort of, with the Jets trying to refocus on defensive responsibility and refocus how they play, Adam Lowry as captain makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I'm on board with it, and I think we've been on board with either 17 or 44 for essentially since the time they removed the C from Blake Wheeler. And yeah, look, I was down at the Canada Life in the new fancy premium section for Scotiabank. I think Scotiabank High Wealth or something like that. It's very, really nice. It's where the old Exchange restaurant used to be. They put
Dave, Drew and I only hang around in the Scotiabank low wealth area.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not in the high wealth area.
I only hang out in the high rate variable rate mortgage lounge. Where does that exist? I think that's in the garbage bin next to the Windsor Hotel now.
Exactly. So, anyways, it's a no, but it was an interesting ceremony. His teammates showed up to support him. He spoke for quite some time about what it meant to him and what this city means to him, what being part of this community means to him. So I don't think that there was one person who would have said this was the wrong decision. And you just have to look at our social media and you can see that fans 100% are behind. I haven't seen one person say a negative thing about Adam Lowry being having the C put on his jersey, although he actually didn't even see that C put on his jersey till that morning. And it was actually funny because I think Weber asked him what was it like seeing it. And you could see
that's Winnipeg. That's the Winnipeg Free Presses, Ken Weeb. You should mention.
Fair point. That news actually was all. I don't know what was bigger news on Tuesday. Was Adam Lowry announced as the captain the biggest news, or Rennie? Rennie breaking the news that Kenny was jumping from the Sportsnet to the Winnipeg Free Press. And I should have had an inkling because Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press and I were the last two media guys in the room still, and we were working away. And then Shawnee Reynolds was doing and John Liu, but Sean was doing his stand-up with Adam Lowry. And so they were just a few feet away from us. And it was odd because Ken was there, and usually Ken would sit in and do the stand up. So I was like, oh, that's kind of weird that it's just Sean, but I didn't really think much of it.
Your spidey sense wasn't quite tingling.
It wasn't tingling
enough.
You know, I was focused on illegalcurve.com, boys, and all of our social media. Couldn't really focus on, sorry, Free Press, Sun, Sportsnet. You guys are secondary in my mind, at least. So I was focused on our stuff. But yeah, no, it was interesting. So yeah, I don't know what was bigger news, but clearly let's focus on the Adam Lowry news.
Yeah.
And it was, again, like I said, you could see when Weber asked him about this wearing the C, you could see he kind of peeked down, looked down. He's like, oh, you know, it's kind of neat to see it. And, you know, like I said, he's humble. He's a well-respected person, both by his teammates and in the media. And I think that, and in the community. So I think that there's no question that this was the right selection for the Winnipeg Jets. I don't think they would have gone wrong with Josh Morrissey either, but I definitely think they hit a home run with Adam Lowry.
You know, this is an interesting comment coming out from Kyle Connor, and this is coming out on Thursday night when we're recording this show. It's in Paul Friesen's article that's now available on winnipegsun.com, and of course will be available on illegalcurve.com.
He will have been available, Drew, for 2 days by the time people are watching this.
Right, that's fair enough. So they know that where they need to find it, it's on Illegal Curve. You may have to go back a couple days, but you'll find it on Illegal Curve. Paul was talking to Kyle Connor about the decision to name Adam Lowry captain, and Kyle Connor says that he was shocked when Bonus called him this summer and said that they were naming a captain. He says that they were shocked that they were going to name a captain. So he was surprised, not that it was Adam Lowry, or didn't have any quibble with it being Adam Lowry. In fact, he says Adam Lowry brings it to the table. He's genuinely a nice individual, gets along with everybody, so I can see the choice. And obviously the fan base loves him. The way he plays really embodies this organization, the city, so no problems with that. He thinks it was a great choice, but he was surprised that they made the decision to begin with, which I found to be an interesting comment. And Connor goes on to continue to say, again, similar to what we heard last year, that even though there wasn't a player wearing a letter on the jersey, Blake Wheeler was still the captain in the room last year. So he was a little surprised that they decided to name a captain in this instance. So that's just sort of an interesting comment, I thought, from Kyle Connor, expressing a bit of a surprise that this happened in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure why he thought that, like why he was surprised that they were going to name a captain. Maybe he didn't think that there was an obvious choice. I mean,
well, here's what he says. Along those lines, Ezzy, this is what I should have said. Kyle Connor says Blake Wheeler was still our leader. So that's the only, I guess, reason for maybe not appointing a captain would be to see how the locker room changes without having Blake Wheeler in it. So that was sort of Kyle Connor's reasoning, is that he thought maybe the team would take another season or take another half season, see what happens with Wheeler physically removed from the room, and then see sort of how the leadership landscape would shake out at that point in time. He doesn't have a problem with the decision. He's just surprised, I guess, by the timing of the decision more than anything.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think, you wonder if, the fact that you have so many players in the last year of their contracts, right? Not just Mark Scheifele, not just Connor Hellebuyck. You have other players, right? Dylan DeMello is in the last year of his contract. Nino Niederreiter, others. I'm forgetting somebody. Is Nate Schmidt in the last year of his contract, or Brendan Dillon? Brendan Dillon's in his last year. I might be forgetting someone else, but the Jets have, 5 or 6 regulars that are in the last year of their contracts. You wonder if because of that, there was more of, I guess, urgency, Dave and Drew, to put a C on a player. And, I think there's always the conversation that comes up with the captaincy and, does it matter, everything like that. I always find it funny. It's like, well, if it didn't matter, why do teams still do it? Right? Like that's just the way it is. There's 2 nets in hockey and each team has a captain. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's just like, that's just the way it is. And teams have gone, I don't know, if teams have gone more than 2 years, guys, but I think, teams have gone a couple years. I'm struggling to, remember a team that, hasn't had a captain for a couple of years, but there is precedent for that.
Really,
but I
really
think
young teams sometimes don't go with it.
And if there's not an obvious one, like, right. And Lowry and Morrissey guys were clearly, to everybody, all Jets fans knew it was going to be Lowry or Morrissey. Like, I thought it was amazing that, Gabe Velarde thought Scheifele was the captain, right? Because he obviously has an A on his jersey, but like, I mean, all due respect to Scheifele, I mean, he's the top point producer, top goal scorer. I mean, obviously along with Kyle Connor, you guys know what I mean. But I think everyone, expected it to be, like Dave said, 17 or 44. So it's a good choice. And I think what's going to be the most interesting, and this is, I think, part of the reason why we talked about it, in addition to killing penalties, blocking shots, the physicality that Lowry brings, he's been so consistent in that third C spot that you don't even have to think about it. I mean, we're debating whether it's going to be Gabe Velarde or Cole Perfetti in the 2C spot. But for the last how many years? I want to say 6 years, Dave, maybe even longer, 7 years. Adam Lowry has been the third line center. And, it's going to be maybe Nino Niederreiter on his wing on the third line. Maybe it's going to be Alex Iafallo. Maybe it's going to be Vlad Nemesnikov. I mean, it could be Morgan Barron. Most likely it's not Mason Appleton, because he is, we think, going to be bumped down to the fourth line with all the guys they have. So then he'll probably play with Rasmus Kupari and David Gustafsson.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
I am getting, but the point I'm trying to make
for another
is,
couple
I think,
weeks.
when it comes to Lowry, there are all those intangibles, and he's great in the community. He, I believe, spends a significant amount of time in Winnipeg in the summer. I know that he has a home in Alberta as well, Calgary. But it's stability. Like, he provides stability in every sense of the word, on the ice and off the ice. So that's why he's captain. And, I think, even though I thought, Morrissey should be the captain, that didn't mean that I thought that, Lowry
is a bad choice.
Mm-hmm. I just personally, I mean, that everyone, all fans, people in the media, everybody can express their personal preference. But I knew that, if it wasn't going to be Morrissey, it was going to be Lowry. So this is good. And
here's what
he's a guy that I think has done everything right, and he deserves it. And you could see, like, Dave was there. He had a smile on his face the whole time. It was awesome.
Yeah. I would hope he would, rather than if he was grimacing the whole time. That would be probably a bit of a problem. Here's what Josh Morrissey had to say. This again coming from Paul Friesen's article. Me sitting here being disappointed or anything other than just being excited about the future isn't going to help me or the team, Morrissey said. Quite frankly, I've just been excited for Adam Lowry, and excited for our team. Last year, we really set out to try and change some things around. We made some big strides, and now we have an opportunity to build off of that. So Josh Morrissey, exactly the kind of comment you'd expect. I would imagine that there's an element of disappointment that he's experiencing, but at the same time, I do think there's probably an element of relief in that you don't have to wear, as I talked about last week on the show, saying, if you're an offensive defenseman and you're the captain and you're struggling, offensively, or you're struggling defensively, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders that I think it's a little bit easier for a guy who's not necessarily a driving offensive force.
Yeah, I agree with you, Drew. And I thought that your point last week was well made. And I think that could be a factor as to why Adam Lowry, and Rick Bowness talked about it on Tuesday. He said, Adam Lowry is not one of our top points guys. He knows who he is. He's not going to be the guy who plays the most minutes. So he, again, has a very defined role on this Jets club. And I think that two things that I wanted to mention about the press conference. Number one was, he still said this is going to be a collective group effort. I'm not going to be in there and like, this is the way it's going to be, boys, and that, you're going to follow my lead. It's going to be, look, he's there to drag these guys into the fight on the ice. But you do get the sense, or I got the sense, I should say, that he really intends this to still be a collaborative effort. And one of the other things I meant to ask him, and I didn't get a chance to ask him, but I should have, was I am curious to know that what, having been sent to the Moose early in his career, I think it was like his third year, having to deal with some adversity. Because a lot of guys, like Blake Wheeler, never dealt with that adversity. A lot of guys, to Ezzy's point, are top guys. They're, the Gretzky's, the Connor McDavid's. They never really deal with adversity. Adam Lowry's had to deal with some adversity, and I think that will allow him to better deal with some of the
relate to some of the younger guys. Maybe?
Absolutely. And he talked about, John Lou asked him about, being a mentor to younger players. But I think what that does is it makes him understand the concerns that guys who are on that, bubble, either way, whether they're in the fourth line, could be in the AHL or AHL, sometimes in the on the fourth line or in the press box. I think that allows him to empathize. Again, he wasn't in the AHL very long, but the fact is he's experienced that. He knew what that sort of, I don't want to say the word trauma because that's probably the wrong word, but like, the fear,
adversity.
The adversity and the fear that creates in a player. And I think that'll serve him in a good stead, when he's trying to empathize with guys who have to go through that throughout the course of the years.
He only played. Sorry, go ahead, Drew.
No, go ahead. As I was going to.
I was just going to say I just checked Hockey DB. He only played 4 games with Moose because obviously he played that full season in St. John's, right? And I took note of that, Dave. I wasn't obviously there like you were at Canada Life, but I took note when I don't remember who it was, if it was Kelly Moore or which journalist, it could have been Mike McIntyre, asked him about like what did he learn from Andrew Ladd and Blake Wheeler, various captains, and he actually unsolicited mentioned Jason Jaffrey, who was the captain of the St. John's Ice Caps, right? So he obviously, and he didn't have to do that. And I thought it was noteworthy because Jason Jaffrey didn't have a long NHL career. He had a great AHL career. And did he go to Europe? I'm not sure if he went to Europe afterwards, but he had a great minor pro for a year. Yeah, minor pro career. So I just thought, to me, that stood out. And he's well spoken. Like we know Lowry's a smart guy. He's a well spoken guy. But just mentioning Jaffrey, Dave, kind of compliments your point there about what that meant to get sent down to the Moose. Whatever year that was, 2016 or 2015. Obviously, because his play was suffering a little bit. But it clearly, he knows that you have to spend most guys have to spend some time. If you're Patrick Laine, you might not have to spend time in the AHL. If you're Connor Bedard, you might not have to spend time in the AHL. But I would say 80% of the players in the NHL, something like that, have played in the American Hockey League. So this is a guy that's had to work. And that's the thing. It's a cliche, but Adam Lowry gives you an honest, hardworking effort every single time he's on the ice. He does not dog it like other players. We're not going to name names. I think you can, figure out which players sometimes dog it on the Jets. So I think Lowry's a great choice, and I think he absolutely is a guy that can relate to some of those younger players, Dave, that are trying to establish themselves, whether it's like a Cole Perfetti or whoever it is. So I mean, we all knew that it was coming. And now it's official, so the Jets can move ahead with their new leadership.
It's funny that the ghost of Blake Wheeler, I still think, lingers. By the
way, coincidentally, he's ranked 17 in New York.
Blake Wheeler is. That's funny. That's Adam Lowry's number, of course. But the ghost of Blake Wheeler still lingers, and it probably will for a little while. I thought it was great. I thought it was just hilarious yesterday, and I'm sure you guys will ask me. I was at the 50 Cent concert, or I guess Thursday or Wednesday. I was at the 50 Cent concert. So I'm trying to remember when this show is actually airing. So it wasn't yesterday. It would be Wednesday. I was at the Busta Rhymes and 50 Cent concert, and one of 50 Cent's the rappers he's got on stage with him comes out wearing a Jets jersey like they often do, pandering to the hometown crowd, and everyone cheered. And then I thought it was great. He turns around and he's wearing a Wheeler 26 Jets jersey. I'm like, how did this happen?
I'll tell you how it happened. He bought it for 50% off at the Jets gear store.
I just thought there was something poetic about it. I'm not entirely certain what was poetic about it, but I just thought that was humorous to me. Almost as humorous as me being at the concert in the first place, I would suggest.
We're just happy that you got out of that concert alive, Drew.
I had so much fun. I can't even begin to tell you how much fun I had. It's hip hop is not my thing, as I'm sure most of you already know. But my wife really likes it, and so she was on cloud nine and having a great time. And I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna lean in hard on this. I'm gonna have a great time alongside her, and I absolutely did. And as long as nobody asks me any follow-up questions, then we'll be fine.
Send it to break then.
Yeah, in that case, we will send it to break. Thank you, Dave. Scott Billeck, I believe, is going to be joining us shortly. So we'll have Scotty. We'll talk more about the captaincy. Declan Chisholm signed with the Jets as well. Much more to come. It's a pre-recorded edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're doing this on Thursday night. You're watching it on Saturday morning. Smash the like button. Our good friend Scott Billeck is up next.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you, but why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Kids eat free all September long at Boston Pizza. That's right. For the month of September, kids eat free with minimum purchase. All this for, what's that word again? Yeah, free. Boston Pizza. Hurry in.
We're back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You're watching this on Saturday morning. It's being recorded on Thursday evening. Scott Billeck is here in the present, which also might be the past, but he's also going to be a large part of the future. So I think I've covered all bases. Scotty, it's good to see you. How are things? Are you able to handle a pre-recorded edition of this fine show?
Yeah, I can say whatever I want, right? And then you guys will just kind of do the nice little edits and all that sort of thing. Oh, awesome. Yeah.
We'll make you sound as articulate and well spoken as ever.
That's all I want.
That might break our AI, Drew.
Break your AI. You just have to delete this segment. That's all you're gonna do.
It's just a missing screen. Is just a black screen for 25 minutes or something like that.
I was trying to quickly actually look up what Rosh Hashanah is. Did you guys talk about it earlier?
Well, it's the Jewish New Year. We know what it is, but if you'd like to explain to our audience what it is.
I have no idea what it is. I was hoping I was trying to do it before, and I was like, okay, as he always says in his emails, be as close to 9:30 as possible. So I tried to line up. I was going to take a leak first before I came on. And
it's the new year, Scotty. All you have to know is apples and honey for a sweet new year. That's all you need to know, right?
You know, I think the Jewish folks have the best. Like when you grew up as a kid, and I wasn't Jewish, but I had a couple of Jewish friends growing up, and like they would always talk about Hanukkah, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. It's like 8 nights of presents, right, or whatever. And like maybe it's not as I'm sure for some it's like everybody's Christmas is different, right? Sometimes you get some presents, sometimes you get a lot of presents. Like not everybody got the Xbox growing up or the Nintendo 64 or I don't know what the stones that Drew.
I was gonna say in Drew's case it was
it's just like I don't know, like some chisel set or something like that, and like a caveman thing or whatever. Right? Make sure you don't cut that out of the show.
When Moses came down with the 10 Commandments, that was a big day for me.
Scotty, I thought you were gonna go with Pog. I thought you were gonna say Pog for Drew. That was the that was where I thought you were going.
As a kid, though, and Drew's way older than me. I mean,
I think Dave's thinking of Pong on ColecoVision or something.
Pong. Yes. Okay, I think you said Pong. I was like, remember Pong?
I did, but
Pog was the cards, right? You'd flip them.
Well, they were like little circular,
circular things.
You had like the metal one, and then you would like hit the Pogs with it, and then like however many.
It's Elf. He's back in Pog form. I mean, does nobody know there's Simpsons references on this show?
No.
Anyways, the long story short, Scotty, Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year.
Good. This is great for the viewers.
By the way, it's now the next Rosh Hashanah by the time we finish this little.
And Scott, you can come to shul with us, synagogue, if you want. Like, I mean, we're recording this in the past, but on Saturday, if you want to come, like, we can hook you up, man.
You can hook me up. All right, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, but you're better off in Rosh Hashanah than Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, you have to fast all day. You can't eat from sundown to sundown. So that gets a little bit. People can get a little
one day.
It's
not like Ramadan, right? Where Ramadan's like a month of all that. No. It's just one day. Okay,
one day.
Yeah.
We cut it down.
You guys took the easy way out.
You can only do one day.
Yeah. Whoa, you guys, huh, Scott?
Every time. Oh man! I also brought it's not a present, but I don't know if you guys have seen this, and hopefully this makes the episode too. I'm going to try this at some point during the episode. It's supposed to make your mouth black, so I don't know what time you want me to do it. It's Fanta Zero Sugar, but it's like a Halloween kind of version or whatever. Anyways, so
anytime you want,
Scotty. I love orange. Orange Fanta is my jam.
Well, yeah, me too. Like I have a glass here. I don't even know what kind of like color this is. It is black. Did you see that?
Gross.
That seems like something you shouldn't be putting into your body.
like anything in a can, I assume, other than beer. But yeah, like they don't tell you what the taste is or anything like that. So,
well, we're doing a live tasting apparently.
If he starts to seize, we do not edit that. We keep the seizure in there as medical evidence.
Kidding? That'll make our hits go up by a million.
I don't think my tongue's turning black. So,
use your drink the whole can.
Hey, I got an idea. Use your tongue to talk about the Jets.
Dave's getting frustrated. Anyway, Scotty, let's as you drink your black Fanta there, it seems like a perfectly normal drink to have.
Halloween.
Halloween's coming up. There's no question about it. Obviously, the big news of the week: Adam Lowry getting the captaincy. But and I will ask you about that. But I wanted to ask you about your tweet because I thought your tweet was very profound. That this was really Mark Scheifele. I know once in a while you have something profound to say.
Scotty's a profound guy.
Yeah, that this captaincy was really Mark Scheifele's to lose. Over his time here in Winnipeg, that he was being, the natural transition was supposed to go where he would be the captain of the Winnipeg Jets, and he's managed to blow that opportunity. Do you get the impression that he understands that, and that might be something that can be used as a fuel for him? Or do you think that, again, it's just he's still so one-dimensional and he doesn't understand that he needs to change his approach?
As profound as that tweet might be, and I'm not going to say it's unfair, because I do believe that over a course of time, Mark Scheifele was being groomed to be the captain of this team. And I think we can all agree that 6-7 years ago, even 5 years ago, let's go back to the 2017-18 playoffs, right? Like, we look at a guy that's halfway into his, halfway into the 10 years that he's been here playing in the league, right? And you're like, okay, this guy is, he was the face of the franchise when he came back, or when the Jets came here. He was the first overall pick, bit of an off the board kind of player, but he really embodied over the course of those next 3 or 4 years after that of draft and develop and all that stuff. Like, he really set in motion the belief system that this team could take players out of the draft, develop them into, legit NHL players, and have them become the stars of your team, right? And so Mark Scheifele, you really have to kind of forget the last few years with Mark, and you go back and you look at everything that he had accomplished, everything that this team had been. Like, Mark Scheifele was that guy, and the only thing that was standing in the way of the captaincy was the early years where Andrew Ladd was his captain, and then at the time they made Blake Wheeler the captain, it just made a lot more sense, right? Older guy, been in the league. All those things, right? Had really learned from Andrew Ladd, that sort of thing, whatever, right? Like, again, we can't use hindsight here. We're just talking about the way it came up. And so to me, my whole thing was it was always Mark Scheifele's to lose, but there was never the notion that he would lose it, right? Like, to me, it was always like Mark Scheifele is the next captain of this team. And then, over the course of time, okay, well, you could talk about, I mean, I don't think any of us ever really spoke of Adam Lowry in this kind of conversation. Now we would have, because in my opinion, Adam Lowry is very much one of the smartest guys on the team, one of the most kind of insightful, one of the most level-headed in kind of any circumstance, whether it's winning, losing a player, not playing maybe where he wants to play in the lineup, having to be kind of that gatekeeper on that third line for most of his career, right? Like, the guy that doesn't really ever get promoted on that line is him. He's so good at kind of being a glue on a line and really kind of exploiting the strengths of his line mates. So you never really talked about Adam Lowry. He was just that good soldier type of guy, right? And he was a leader, but he didn't need a C, he didn't need an A, he didn't need any of that stuff. But the way that it's gone for the last couple years with Mark, a lot of people on Twitter say, "Oh, he hasn't been the same since the Jake Evans hit or whatever." Maybe, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, Mark has never really said that.
It's definitely a line of demarcation in his career, though.
Sure, possibly, yeah. It's a good, it is a place where you could probably, it could be that kind of schism, right? Like of where maybe things started to, the crest or whatever, the climax of his career, and then it's kind of starting to come down a little bit in terms of how
be
he's
careful
kind of
when you
viewed.
start talking about climaxes when Drew's around, Scotty.
Jeez,
this is all. I thought I got all the. Anyways, whatever. Regardless, I'm going to take a sip of my dark drink. Here.
I might just leave.
How do you know how do you see? This is why we normally record, Scott. Just so you know, in the morning. This is now IC After Dark, and so we've it's taken a turn.
Right. I guess we can get Anyways, so back on point. I think that some of the things that Mark said, it started to me. And we've talked about the defense, but I think part of the problem with Mark is like it never mattered that he didn't play defense until this team didn't have a defense, right? So you look at that and whatever, but you could always kind of excuse it because you excuse players not being defensive because of how offensive they are and how good they can be. I mean, my always thing is
but he doesn't have the you're saying once he lost the safety net, it's when it became more glaring.
I agree. I think so, and I think over time, and we've seen it, and I think we can agree that it became there's a part where Mark kind of got a little selfish, and I think we've seen that. I think we've seen that especially over the last couple of years. And honestly, I have zero issue with Mark Scheifele after not last season, but the season before, questioning where he wants to be and all that stuff. I don't have a problem with that. I think a player should always play where he wants to play and wants to be comfortable. And if it's not working in that place, then whatever, right? Like, I mean, it's not I don't have an issue with an athlete who is owned essentially by a team having some sort of freedom at some point. But I think the problem was that Mark's play didn't match his ambition, right? As kind of a player, right? And so, Mark always talked early on about he wanted to be in the same conversation as these top centers, right? Whether it's McDavid or a Matthews or I don't know, whoever, Bergeron, it doesn't matter. Name a top center in this league in that upper echelon of centers, and Mark wanted to be in that conversation. And I think there's been many times in his career where you could look at and be like, yes, like the 2018 playoffs, 100% is the one. But when this team kind of fell off a cliff after that 2018-19 season, and the defense fell away and all that stuff, like you're looking for somebody to really step up and be that guy. And I always feel that Mark didn't really do that. And then at the same time, because we in the media get a different kind of look into what goes on, right? I mean, you look at Caroline last year, and this is probably the easiest one to look at because it's the recency bias, right? Mark should have come out and spoken there. He wore the A, right? You want to be the captain on this team. You want to take charge. You want to do that. You don't hang out the guy that had been here for 5 minutes out to dry. And that's what he did, right? And that's a huge problem, in my opinion. And
it was Nino Niederreiter, right?
It was Niederreiter that came out because that whole line got benched for the half the game or the third period at least. And it was Niederreiter that had to come out and say what everybody else was thinking, right? And like I get it. You don't want to do that, but that's your job as a captain or even as an assistant captain when the captain doesn't come out. And Blake Wheeler didn't need to come out and speak after that game. It wasn't his line that got benched in that game. And so like I think over time, if you want to be a captain, you pass a series of tests, right? And the tests are always going to be different coaches or whatever it's going to be, right? There's always going to be tests, and unfortunately for Mark, he's failed some of those tests. Most of those have been recent. I think if you would have given Mark Scheifele the captaincy ahead of the 2017-18 season, sure, it would have been fine. Nobody would have said anything. But I think now, a few years on, the Jake Evans hit, whatever. I mean, depending how you want to look at that, there's just been moments throughout the last several seasons now where you're like, yeah, maybe this guy isn't. And you've had but at the same time, you've had the emergence of somebody like Josh Morrissey, who has been through a lot on and off the ice. And I think you could have looked. the side note, but one of the things about the Lowry captaincy that I sat there and thought about on Tuesday, I'm like you almost felt bad for Josh, you know, and he doesn't need my pity, he doesn't need anybody's pity or whatever, but you're like, here's a guy who could equally be the captain of this team, and you just like, there was no really wrong answer between the two, and so you just had to make a decision. And it's a difficult decision to make for anybody, right? And I sat there that day, I'm like, and the one of the things that and I even wrote it back in the summer is I think both of these guys, if they didn't get chosen as the captain, they could handle it well, right? Like, it's going to suck, it's going to hurt. I think, you know, as any player, whether you have an ego or you don't have an ego or whatever, to be a captain of a Canadian hockey franchise is something that, I mean, around here, I think after all this time, you know, the Blake Wheeler stuff and all that, I think Blake Wheeler is still going to be looked at among the fan base as a good captain for this team. And I think Andrew Ladd is still revered as sort of in that way too. And I think there's something to that. I mean, you're not the captain of the Canadians or the Maple Leafs or whatever, but you're still a captain in a city that is mad about hockey. And so I think there's something to that. But I think for Mark, he lost it. And then there's the other side of it too, where he's just in a tough spot to be named as a captain. Like, you can't basically 2 years in a row kind of question if you're going to stay here and then head into the season as a lame duck and expect to get the C, right? So I think to answer your original question, like, you know, do you think Mark maybe saw this coming or knew or whatever? I think that part of it for sure he saw coming. Like, you're not going to be named the captain if you don't have a long-term extension in place here, right? And I think that's the difference between him and Adam Lowry, right? And I think Josh Morrissey still ends up becoming the captain of this team in a couple of years, right? When Adam Lowry may or may not, whatever, we'll see what happens with Adam Lowry. He only has 3 years left on his deal. I think Morrissey has 4 after that, or maybe 3 after that, 5. Well, no, I'm sorry. After
Morrissey's got after 27-28, and Lowry's got he's only got 2 years left. So
2 years left. Okay, so yeah, so there we go. So I think there's still
3 years left. I was looking at Velarde, not Lowry.
Sure, Lowry's 3, Morrissey's 4, 5, I think.
And I
think
that's
exactly right, Dave.
Morrissey can easily be the captain after that if Adam Lowry doesn't continue here. We'll see what happens, right? I mean, I think a large part of the Adam Lowry shift is that Adam Lowry, and I believe it, that he can actually change the culture of this team. Like, I honestly believe this about Adam Lowry, and why I think it's. And I was on holidays, so I didn't really get a chance to write about a lot of the Adam Lowry stuff. But I mean, for me, Adam Lowry is the type of player, like, you know, I would want on my hockey team all the time. I'd
go through a wall for his teammates, right?
Oh, well, that's the thing, right? Like, this is the thing. Like, he can step up his game if he needs to, and we've seen that. He can deal with ruts. We saw the rut last year. What did he end up getting to? 19 games? 8? I don't know how many games. It was a long time, right? That he didn't score, but you never seemed to affect Adam, right? And then when he does score the goal, he's just like, yeah, finally, right? Like, it's about time, right? But that's the level-headedness of Adam Lowry. And so I think that, you know, this team might hit bumps this season. I think none of us here can really say with certainty what this season actually looks like for the Winnipeg Jets. But I think Adam Lowry, and I think Josh would have been perfect. Like, we have to be clear. I think Josh could have done the exact same thing. I think there was times last year, though, that Josh I don't know if he got annoyed, but it was just like Josh entered a different world last year that he had ever been in, because the way that he played, right?
Yeah, his impact.
There were so many of us wanting to talk to him just because of everything that he was doing. It was just like, you know, all these records were dropping early on in the season, or these career highs were being set early on in the season because he never had kind of that season. He was just doing things he had never done before. And I'm in the room after every game, and I was on the road quite a bit last year too. And I think just having to speak all the time, Josh maybe wasn't just ready for that. I think Adam is maybe. So if there's one thing that you would knock, and it's not even really a knock, it's just like there was times last year I think Josh just got sick of talking about himself. And that's different though when you're being a captain, because you're not necessarily always talking about yourself. You're talking about the team. Why did the team lose? Why are you guys doing so well? Whatever, right? I think there's a lot of things that play into that. So, like, again, I want to be clear. I don't think there was a wrong choice between those two. I do think, though, because Adam Lowry is now the captain, that he is, if not he's a perfect choice in my opinion because of just how I don't even know the word. Just like how steady he is and how steady he has always been.
A stabilizing force maybe on a team that has upheaval.
Well, and that's the thing. But I think he can go to the bottom of the roster and talk to that guy, and he can go to the top of the roster and talk to that guy, and he knows how to navigate both of those situations, right? And so when you're like, again, I think there's more to his captaincy than just the C and being, you know, that guy who talks to the refs and whatever. Like, I think the thing with Adam is that I think he knows it too, because I think Adam Lowry is, I would say, probably the smartest guy on the team and the most, not even just the smart, but the most aware guy on the team of how things are going. Like, he's most in tune with everything. I had a good conversation with Adam Lowry last year, just about, you know, I'm always curious what players think about what we write about them, right? Like, I always think it's interesting but the one thing that he said is, like, he has no problem with us ripping is not the right word, but that's the word that I believe he used. It's just, he has no issue with that if you're around, right? Because you see it and he believes that you have an informed opinion on it. And he might not agree with it, but he will take the time then to talk to you about that, right? And again, I think all these things feed into the fact that Adam Lowry has the ability to actually do what this team has needed to do for 3 or 4 years now. And that's really kind of move on from where it has been. The culture that has gone a little sour, somewhat say toxic at times. I think Adam Lowry has the wingspan and the strength in both of his arms to pull one side and hold the other side and kind of pull them together, right? And I think that's something that this team really desperately needs, right? And I think the other thing is that they didn't have a captain last year. I don't know who Rick Bowness went to in the room to say, hey, can you talk to this guy? I don't want to be the guy. You know, I don't need to be the badass coach to go and be that hard ass or whatever on a guy, you know, right? Like, sometimes the players need to kind of police themselves, right? And I think just Adam Lowry can be the guy that Rick Bowness can go to and be like, hey, I need you to talk to this guy or whatever, right? But I don't even know half the time if he needs that, because I think Adam Lowry is so aware in himself. And now that he's in that role, it doesn't have to be out of place for Adam. And I don't think it's out of pocket for Adam Lowry to ever do that in the room. I don't know if that would ever have been the case in the past. But now, like, it's just like, I don't think anybody's, and he's going to be a good guy to bring in the next kind of wave of players too over the next couple of years. The Barlows, the Lamberts, the McGroartys, guys like that. I'm missing a few, obviously, but
Charles
I
Lucius.
think, yeah, exactly. And I think there's a lot of guys there that can look up to Adam Lowry, but can also just talk to Adam Lowry like a human being. Like, and this is the other thing too. And I'm not saying that you know, not every guy. You're in a dressing room of 23 guys. Not every guy is the same, right? We're 4 people here. None of us are the same. Some guys are approachable. Some guys aren't approachable. Some guys just don't like.
Which of us is unapproachable?
No, I'm just kidding. But I'm just joking. But my point is, like, Adam Lowry is the type of guy that I don't even know how to even describe this, but like, if there's a question that's if something rough going on in the league or whatever, let's say the Pride Nights last year, like, Adam Lowry is the perfect guy to go and talk to about that, because he just pays attention to these things, right? Like, there's just so many things. I'm like all over the map here, but I'm trying to say that Adam Lowry has all the tools, in my opinion, to lead this team in a different direction than it's been going in. And I think he has, and I think, you know, people are like, well, who is this guy learning from? I'm like, well, his dad. And here's another thing about Adam Lowry. How an impossible situation was he put in when Dave Lowry was made the interim coach of this team, and how well he handled that. The only complaint that I ever heard from Adam Lowry about that is, like, I just don't want, like, when you're talking to me about my dad, don't call him my dad. He's my head coach right now, right? Like, he is my dad. But even when people still messed up on that, he would just never, like, you know, like, there was just, Adam just seems to have a very good grasp of, and he's 30 or whatever, 29, 30 now. But I still think he has the wisdom of a guy who's played in the league and had retired from the league already, right? Like, I just think there's so much about Adam Lowry makes sense about this, and so that's where I'm at on it. I think he's literally the perfect guy to do it. And when we were talking about it in the summer, we've talked about it and we've written about it, I think it just made sense. And I think a lot of it made sense because this is what we kind of know, at least from being in the media, seeing Adam every day, seeing the way he competes. I think fans can see it too, though. It's not just because we're in the room. Here's a guy who willingly will fight Adam or Ryan Reeves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's a guy who will take that hit or go after that guy that delivered the bad hit or whatever. But he doesn't. Adam Lowry's never really crossed. He doesn't cross the line, right? Like, and there's been times where he's hit a guy the wrong way, but he'll be the first one to say, like, yeah, like maybe I did hit that guy, and I'll accept the punishment. Like there are things like the Alex Tuck hit that led to the first Ryan Reeves fight with him was a little iffy, and I think Adam Lowry even said that it was just the way that the two collided, and it just looked worse than it was in the end. But like I think there's such an awareness there, and I think that's a good thing for a team that hasn't really been self-aware over the last couple of years, right? And I think that's a huge point in all this, is that you've gone and given the C to a guy that probably has the best grasp of everything outside of maybe Josh Morrissey, and but the ability to kind of navigate that and see how that kind of makes sense. So that's a very long-winded answer, but I think I never wrote about it, so like, I've had a lot of this. Like I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and so there it is.
You're in a safe space, Scotty. You know that.
That was a visual Winnipeg Sun article for all.
Pretty much, right? Like I mean,
by the way, Drew, the show is now over.
Yeah, and that's it for us, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night. No, it was articulate. We're sharing circle here. You shared with our audience. You shared with us, Scott Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun, giving his thoughts on Adam Lowry.
Always stayed my best.
Scotty, just going back to Mark
Let
Scheifele,
him drink his drink first.
Yeah, no, I'm still talking here. I'm giving Scotty had a little diatribe there. I'm going to let him enjoy his Fanta, his Halloween Fanta. But I mean, obviously, training camp is coming up quickly next week, and we're going to be talking about who's standing out and everything like that. Hopefully, we're going to see you out at FanFest, because we're going to be broadcasting live from FanFest.
Oh, I can get a good picture of me Like, do you remember that picture from a few years ago?
Oh yeah,
that looks
that
like
picture lives forever.
Salivating over Ezzy.
You look like you were angry not to be on the show.
No, it was the death stare. It was the Scotty Billeck death stare.
To me, I thought I looked hungry. There's some meat on those bones.
I'm always hungry, Scotty. No, but you saw the Elliot Friedman report that came out last week, and I mean, there wasn't really anything there aside from him saying that that Hellebuyck and Scheifele are going to revisit the possibility of signing an extension. But I mean, this is obviously going to be a storyline until one of these players signs a contract extension. But I wanted to kind of get your take on, I know we're recording this 2 days early, but nothing's going to change between the time we pre-recorded this and Saturday. But
nothing changes.
But where do you stand now? Because I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows if Scheifele and or Hellebuyck are going to sign. I guess two-part question, like, do you think there's a chance that both of these guys re-sign or one of these guys re-sign? And what do you think the possibility is that, Scheifele and or Hellebuyck sign a shorter-term deal, like Austin Matthews, for example? I realize different players. I mean, obviously different ages, but I mean, I don't know what Dave's showing there. I guess that's the picture. That's Scotty Billeck. That was what, 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
Yeah, it was before that horrible station that we won't talk about.
Yeah.
I think I still had hair in that photo, or at least a receding hairline at the very least.
Yeah, you've lost all of it now, Drew. But I mean, going back though, where do you stand right now on? That's amazing. You did have quite a bit more hair. That must have been 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
I looked ravenous.
It looks ravenous, and you're going to eat Mindell for lunch. That's what it looks like, Scotty. But if Dave will allow me, if Dave's done with show and tell, and I'll finish this question. But just where do you stand right now on the likelihood, Scotty, of Scheifele and Hellebuyck re-signing with the Jets? And as part of that, do you see there being a shorter term deal? Like what, and as maybe part of that, talk about, who you think has a stronger likelihood of re-signing with the Jets?
Well, Hellebuyck is probably 50% now. How much over? Is it 50.5%? Is it 51? I don't know. But I would, I think if I was a betting guy, I mean, I'd take the odds of him signing over the odds of him not. And I think this summer has it's showed a few things about just the league in general. That, this league is not as willing as it maybe used to be to give, Carey Price $10.5 million or, Vasilevsky 9.5, but really like 12 in a tax-free state or whatever that calculation is, right? Like, I think teams are now, I mean, we look at the Vegas Golden Knights who won the Stanley Cup, that they did it with, I guess, a third stringer at that point. I don't even know. It would have been Logan Thompson, then Brossoit, and then Aiden Hill. So yeah, like basically a second and third stringer won them the cup.
And you didn't even throw in Robin Leonard there.
Yeah, he was supposed to be.
Oh yeah, right, exactly, right. So maybe third and fourth stringer. However you want to kind of look at it, right? It's a very. It proved that you just need serviceable goaltending, and you don't have to pay top dollar for it, right? Not serviceable is the wrong answer, or the way to put that. You need good goaltending, but you don't need to pay, 10, 11, 9, whatever, right? I mean, that's bad math or bad counting, but you don't have to spend that money to win a Stanley Cup, and so that was probably a really bad thing for Connor Hellebuyck this summer. Was, if I'm a team like New Jersey, let's say, or whoever. Yeah, maybe before the playoffs, you're like, or after they exited the playoffs, the Devils, you're like, oh yeah, we're going to make a huge move and try and really go after Connor Hellebuyck, and we'll give him what he wants because we need that goaltending and we need that. But then as the rounds went on and the Stanley Cup played out and all that sort of thing, well, maybe not. And so I think now that maybe teams aren't going to be as willing to give that type of money, it's forced Connor Hellebuyck and his camp to kind of reconsider, okay, well, where is the earning potential here for Connor Hellebuyck? Is it in Winnipeg? Can he eke $9 million out of the Jets to stay for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it might be, right? Because I think, and this is the other problem with both of these guys, is their age, right? Austin Matthews at, what is he, 25, 26, can take a 3-year deal and still get paid more on his next contract because he's only going to be 28 or 29 or whatever, right? There's still time for him to like, his earning potential, it can still be maximized, right? It's not the case for Mark Scheifele, and this is likely
the last contract.
Well,
it's
the last big contract, right? And so that's a big deal in this, and it can't be overlooked. You can't sit there and look at it and say, these guys can still make more money, even if they take a 3 or 4 year deal, right? You got to think, like, in 3 or 4 years for Mark Scheifele, he's not the same player that he is now, and even with the idea that Mark keeps himself in incredible shape and all that, like, Mark does a lot of great things in the off season, during the season. I mean, this guy is very in tune with kind of keeping himself in tip top shape, right? So, yeah. But
Tom
I just
Brady,
think,
no tomatoes, they cause an inflammation
right,
diet, all that jazz.
Right, but I mean, there is something to that, but that doesn't get you paid more when you're 33 or 34, right? Like, it extends your career, so you can keep signing those, 1 year, $1 million, or 1 year, 2, whatever those little contracts are at times. So it can get you some money at the end of your career when teams just want you for your veteran presence and all that stuff. But again, so I think for Connor Hellebuyck, I mean, it might be his whole career in Winnipeg until, he's 34, 35, let's say. Maybe he goes and plays to Detroit, maybe whatever, who knows. But like, I think that the idea that Connor Hellebuyck could re-sign here because he can make the most money here and have the most opportunity to play here, that is there for him. I think if his asking price came down for other teams, but that's the other problem, right? Like, you don't want to be the goalie that's taking less money. It's not good for the rest of the goalies in the NHL. It's not good. It's not, I mean, it wouldldn't be favorably looked at by the PA, I assume. It happens, right? I mean,
either will Mike Babcock, by the way.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we can go on to that after if you want, but so I think Hellebuyck is a little. He's probably
you guys aren't allowed to look at my camera roll. Let me just put that out there immediately.
What that is, let me finish this. The Hellebuyck thing, I just think Hellebuyck's closer, right? I think that there's just more. There's more odds that he could do it than Mark. I think to me the captaincy might have kind of sewn that all up, right? Like I think, if we're being honest, like I still think this summer is half done in terms of getting rid of, relieving this team of maybe some of the things that kind of have held it back, right? And you got rid of Blake, and I think that just needed to happen. I think it's just for both sides there.
Mm-hmm.
I think for both sides, I think Mark moving on is also the thing that needs to happen too. And I do wonder how much of a distraction that becomes this season going into this year. Because if Mark has maybe checked out of Winnipeg in his head, how difficult does that make the team in the room and just on the ice and all those things? Like I think there is a legitimate concern about that. And there's always a concern about guys that go into the lame ducks, right? There's always, because it's just a bit of a distraction. You have a distraction on this team where it's your perennial Vezina contender, your franchise goalie, and your franchise center. They're both heading into the year without contracts, like that. Mm-hmm. That is without new contracts, extensions, right? So, yeah, that's a tough ask for a team to try and keep that out of everything that they're doing. And guys will say, "Oh, it's never a distraction," whatever. History shows that these things are distractions. They get asked about often. They, the trade deadline 2 months ahead of the trade deadline in late December, we're going to be talking about, like after Christmas, we're talking about, well, these guys aren't signing, or in early January 15th, whatever. That's all we're going to be talking about, right? And what happens if the Jets are in second place? And now you have to think about the idea of, well, do you lose them for absolutely nothing and try and make a run, or do you really take a step back and trade them both and really kind of sewer your chances of where you are at the moment and go from there? So I don't know, but I think, to answer the actual question here is that I think Hellebuyck is more, I think he is closer in terms of who would re-sign than Mark Scheifele is. And it's just kind of my gut feeling on it, based on kind of how the NHL is right now. I still think there's a big market for Mark Scheifele next summer. And I think Mark, who took a team-friendly deal early on in his career, still has a chance to make more money. I think for Hellebuyck, because the way goalies are and that sort of thing, you can still make money. You can play till you're 40. I mean, there's guys who do that. But I just think that if Connor Hellebuyck wants to maximize the most money that he can possibly make, unless there's some sort of, something could change, right? Big goalie goes down early in the season, you trade him there. Who knows, right? I mean, Colorado's looking for a goalie as of today because Pavel Francouz is not, or Francouz is not not healthy, and they don't really have a franchise goalie, and they haven't, and it was part of their problem last season. So after winning the cup with Darcy Kemper. So yeah, I don't know. It's just my gut feeling is that Hellebuyck would be there's been a rethink there, I think, from Hellebuyck's side because of how the market is right now. With the cap going up, but I still think he's in that spot where the cap probably doesn't go up enough next year to get what you want. And if you could wait 2 years, then maybe, but you're not going to take a 1-year contract as a goalie. You need to find a way to, he signs 5 years at $9 million, puts another $45 million in his wallet and go from there. I think there's a path to that. I'm not entirely sure there is one with Mark Scheifele.
Well, Scott, we're in the past, but this is going to be in the present, or we're in the present and future. Right. And I want to talk about the future, though, because you wrote about the future, even though you were on holidays. And that's who I want to talk about. All those young stars. We've been watching them. Well, actually, they will have already played against the Edmonton Oilers young stars when this goes live on Saturday, but they haven't yet, of course. But we've been watching them at the Hockey for All Center the last few days, showing their personalities. And there's hope springs eternal. There's a lot of excitement, of course, for the youth, and especially with this group, there's a lot of personality. I mean, you've probably seen a lot of the clips that have come out of the Hockey for All Center, courtesy of Illegal Curve, no big deal. But the point is you've seen what these guys are saying, right? And you see the fun they're having. You know, Chibrikov today I thought was really funny. That, you know, first of all, his English is fantastic after being in Toronto all summer. But, you know, his line about Colby Barlow saying, "Are you really a 2005? You look like you're 25." You know, like that just shows these guys are, you know, like Colby Barlow yesterday.
Something. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like Colby Barlow the other day talking about how Recker McGordy's got FOMO because he's not here. And, you know, again, like I said, you can just see the way they all talk about each other. You know, Brad Lambert today talking about Tyrell Bauer, Thomas Milic, again, all these guys. So you wrote about them, and I think that you're seeing a lot of the excitement that there is for this group. So, you know, maybe talk about that list you came up with. Elias Salomonsson, by the way, or Salmonson, sorry. He had a really interesting answer when he was asked about his future. I think by your colleague, Paul Friesen, as to where he sees himself, you know, this upcoming year. And my expectation was he was going to say Schleifke, who he actually was playing for before he came back to Winnipeg. But he said, I'm going to try and make a shot for a spot here as a right shot defenseman. So
I
thought that was an interesting answer. But anyways, you know, maybe you expand on
I know what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, the list, it was sort of not in like an order. It was more of like, it was just like, these are guys, it was 10 guys that we were going to watch at the thing and whatever. I mean, to answer about Salomonsson, I mean, I don't know if we're in agreement here, but is he not the top defensive prospect on this team at the moment? Like, and I'll say it. I mean, you could talk about Billy, you could talk about Declan, you could talk about even Sandberg still being a, you know, somewhat of a prospect, given that last year was his rookie season or whatever. I don't know how you want to look at that, but here's a guy who is in a position right now to really take the reins on one of these right shot defense, like right-handed side spots on this blue line when this team loses a couple of those guys next year. And so, like, I think if you're looking at like who has the best route, or I don't want to call it the easiest, but who has the most realistic route to the NHL, to an NHL blue line right now? To me, it is Elias Salomonsson, right? Like because it's just the way that he shoots and the side that he plays on, right? And it doesn't, not even that the way that he shoots. It's obviously a bonus when you're a right-handed shot guy, you know, all those things. But the fact that he plays the right side and that's where he plays, like that is I think it's not brownie points, but you know what I mean, right? Like
there's a relatively clear path for him to climb.
I think so, right? And so his job is to take it, right? And I love his ambition. You know, we hear every guy say that pretty much. Some guys are realistic, some guys no, and great for him. I don't see the route this year, and the problem is there's just too big of a logjam, right? The Jets haven't moved anybody off that blue line this summer. They still got a bunch of guys that they probably want to get in there and can't. Who knows what's going to happen with Declan Chisholm, right? Like, I mean, there's just no, I don't know how you figure it out. So, but next year it offers a little more, there'll be more opportunity, I assume. So yeah, I mean, I think for him, Salomonsson, I just want to see how he plays. I really want to see him in like these NHL, like the training camp exhibition games. And I'd like to really actually see him a little bit against some veteran Lions, right? Like see where he actually is, because he plays against men in Sweden. But I want to see him here on the more compact ice, like North American ice. Like, how do you play against that? How do you use your size? How do you use your vision? All those things about him, skating, everything, right? Like that's where you kind of want to see him. But I'm interested in Lucius, right? I mean, I think the thing, and I think he'll be the first to kind of admit he's kind of had a pretty raw deal over the last several seasons, right? Here's a guy who had to learn how to walk and skate again after his ankle problem, and last year his shoulder goes out, and so he's got to get surgery on that. And you know, thanks to Dave doing that interview this summer, you found out that he was taking contact again. So I mean, those are good things, right? Like, and so like, I'm curious about him, because here's a guy that almost has to prove two things, right? Prove that he's, you know, good enough for the NHL, but really prove that he's healthy, you know? And so that's something to watch. I'm really interested to watch Brad Lambert. I'm a big fan of the way that he plays. I'm a big fan of his skating. Like,
especially the fact that he's up the middle now.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? So Seattle
changes everything for the Jets.
Well, and so I had a good conversation. Like, so when the Ice were playing them in the playoffs, and even when Seattle was here earlier, actually, I don't know if they came earlier, but I had talked to Lambert. I got on a call with him through Seattle, And he was talking like he likes center, right? Like that's he feels natural. That's his natural position where he grew up playing and all that stuff. And he's been moved around, and I think the Finnish team kind of really got him down a little bit because he just wasn't playing where he would normally play. And so when you ask a first line guy to play fourth line, it's just a different scenario, right? It's the same thing as asking a fourth liner to play on the first line. It's hard to make that transition. It's a different game, right? But in Seattle, and you look back, and what a great move by the Jets to give Lambert that kind of runway. And I questioned it at first. I'm like, well, this guy, I mean, I think he could play in the AHL. And obviously Dave follows it way more than I. And you look at his stat line, wasn't the same. I don't know if that was indicative really of his play or not. Dave could speak better to that because I just don't get enough time to watch the Moose during the hockey season. But I think the way that they just allowed Seattle to, they wanted him to play center, and I think the Jets were okay with, yeah, let's see what we have in this guy at center. He's fast. He's so fast, and the stride that he takes, he is like, I mean, you reserve these words for like your significant others, or whatever, but he has a beautiful skating stride. Like that's what he has. It's really. I love watching him skate because he's just so
it's exquisite.
Fast.
That's the word that Drew likes to use. Exquisite.
Sure. Yeah, like
it usually in reference to myself though, but that's a separate issue entirely.
But it's good, right? Like I mean, that's something they need. And if he can, like, here's the thing: but we've been looking at this team. Like if you lose Dubois and you lose Scheifele. Like, where's the center depth on this team? Like,
Adam Lowry, number one center.
Well, right. Like, I mean, you brought Nemestikov back, and I think in part because he could play second line center in a pinch, and he might have to. We'll see kind of what Velarde does, or the Scheifele talked earlier on in the summer about Perfetti and seeing if he can play there. And so I think there are options for them to look at. But there's no real clear-cut centers right now on this team outside of the like top line centers. I mean, Velarde is probably the guy that you kind of put in that spot to start camp, and Perfetti on the left wing, and then see kind of how that works out. But I think Lambert could be kind of a maybe a bit of a godsend for this team if he can play that role, because he can bridge a gap too between him and then the next wave. But the other thing too is like Lucius, right? Lucius might be one of those guys who's just like a Perfetti, right? Maybe I think Lucius has the speed. I think that's the difference between him and Perfetti. But can he handle playing that position at his size? And I hate using this whole size thing because we know that size is not, I mean, it can be a predictive kind of thing on how a guy kind of plays that center position or not. But I just want to see. Really, you just want to see Lucius play, right? Like, I think that's part of the problem right now is like this guy was an 18th overall pick and you're just waiting to kind of see him actually play, because I think part of his problem right now, not his personal problem, but just like the perception or the thing is like the development has been kind of stunted a little bit because he just hasn't been able to play. But when he does play, he scores overtime bronze medal winning goals, right? Like he can do those things, right? He has those abilities, but you just haven't really seen it enough. And so that's an issue. And so I'm interested to see him play. There's a bunch of guys on the list. You guys can read it at the winnipegsun.com. But there's a lot here because I've just gone way too long again. But like there's a lot. I mean, I'm interested in Tyrell Bell. Will he ever play in the NHL? I don't know, but he's kind of that
my prediction
type of guy.
My prediction,
right? Like, I don't know.
He will.
Well, and I think he can be a serviceable third line or third pairing guy.
Yeah,
who has that size and the ability to want to hit people. Like he can do the things that the Jets have probably wanted Logan Stanley to do for a long time, and they just haven't gotten it out of him, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there is room for those guys, because I think you look at it at the trade deadline. I think one of the biggest additions that the Jets might have wanted at that point was Luke Schenn, right? And it was just like you had this kind of big defenseman who could help their defense because of his physicality. It was something the Jets don't really have on their back end. I mean, they have Brendan Dillon and they have a little bit of Dylan Sandberg, though he's not. I don't know. I think Dylan Sandberg is going to kind of grow into that as he gets more comfortable, kind of playing NHL, on an NHL blue line over time, and when he's not having to maybe worry about the next guy behind him, because I think he's kind of cemented that job now. But yeah, so I'm interested in those guys. I'm actually interested now in Connor McLennan that he got picked up by the Jets there. I think there's a huge opportunity for Connor actually. you look at Connor McLennan's WHL stats, and don't get me wrong. I mean, what did Eric Ferris scored like 60 goals one season in the WHL? And
hey, he's a Stanley Cup champion, Scotty.
He is 100%. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't a superstar in the NHL, right? There's Leipzig, Tan, all these guys that have that were great in Portland. That year, the best player on that Portland line was Oliver Bjorkstrand, right? And he's the one that's playing in the NHL now and is a pretty good player. And so I'm not saying that Connor McLennan scoring 46 goals last year, I think it was 45, something like that, is going to make him a top NHL player. But I think the one thing that Connor McLennan has always done, where he's been passed up in drafts and all that, is just kept his nose to the grindstone and gone. All right. And so I think there is maybe a potential for him to maybe earn a bit of a two-way NHL contract, right? And we'll see what happens, right? I mean, this is a kid that's taken advantage of every opportunity that he's gotten for the most part, when it's been actually given to him. So let's see what happens. I'm interested now to watch him, and he wasn't on my list, obviously, because he hadn't gotten signed, or he's not even signed, right? Like he hadn't gotten invited to the Penticton tournament. But
we know what happened in Philadelphia, by the way. Like he was a 6th round pick of the Flyers,
right,
a couple of years ago. I don't like. Do we know?
I don't think they qualified him, right?
No, they never qualified him.
They didn't qualify. He just becomes a UFA. He signed an AHL deal in March, I think.
Or said with Chicago, right?
Yeah. And so I think that, and I tried to confirm this, and the best of my knowledge is if he signed a two-way deal here, the only problem is I don't think he can go to the Moose. I think he has to go to the Chicago Wolves, because
the Wolves theoretically could loan him to the Moose, though.
Yes, I believe that's true. But
that's like when we saw, remember Tanner Kaspick, who was a St. Louis Blues draft pick, was loaned, even though he was supposed to go to the Rampage. He ended up going to the Moose.
And I assume that there would be something there that would allow that to happen, because I think the Chicago Wolves, or whatever team he signed for, Chicago is an independent team this year. Like they don't have things. They don't have an affiliate. So I think that would be a little easier to okay, hey, we'll see. I mean, who knows? I don't know how those things work.
Yeah.
I mean,
hey, no problem. Yeah. Go to our biggest rival in the AHL. Not a problem.
Well, and again, I think more of the problem is you just don't have the same control. Like, could the Winnipeg Jets tell the Chicago Wolves how to do things? Right.
No, that's why Carolina got rid of them.
Right, and this is part of and so this, and again, you would know more about this than me, but it's like for the Jets, they want control. This is why they brought the Moose back even here. I mean, it saves money, of course, whatever with all that, but you just have a way better sense of your prospects, and I don't think you want to lose him. Anyways, we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
Scott, they also wanted me to have less
ahead of ourselves on this show. But
they also wanted me to have less free time.
Sure.
That's okay, Dave. Your idle hands.
Those trips to St. John's were
the devil's play thing.
Yeah, I know. I kept getting stuck in the airport, so I was like, "Come on, can you bring them back, please?"
Anyway, so I always enjoy this tournament because I think it's just fun, right? But to go back to just the one thing you said there about kind of I said this earlier. I said this during development camp. I think I wrote a column on it, and I think there's been a huge, not a huge shift, but there's been a seismic. Let's call it seismic. That's a word that I've heard around here before. But I think there's been a bit of a shift on how this team has not only drafted, but also guys to start thinking about, maybe I want to go somewhere else. Well, no, but my best buds here or whatever. I want to play with this guy. I think that started in development camp, and I wrote about this back then. And I'm like, they're really there is a concerted effort here to do something different. And I'm not even sure. I don't know if I'm putting the right finger on exactly what it is, but you can look at the way that these guys interacted, how much interaction was done in front of us in the media, right? Mm-hmm. Things that you never saw before. The Barlow and the McGroarty thing that really took off, like that bromance, whatever you want to call it. The way but that was out in the open. Like they made sure, this Jets team, they made sure that everybody saw that, right? Mm-hmm. And we all saw it. And that, again, it drums up interest in your future players, of course, all that stuff. But I think it's more than that, right? I think it's about getting these guys excited as to the McGroarty FOMO comment, all that. I think it's getting these guys excited about just being together, playing together, and all that. And I think that's a different direction that this team is taking than it had in previous years, right? And I think they just have they also just have a kind of a good nucleus of prospects right now that that really seem to kind of get along. Like you have guys that like Milic and Lambert and Bauer, Lambert and Bauer didn't play together, but Milic and Bauer were on the same team, and they all played for Seattle, so that you kind of know, like there's just a bit of familiarity there, right? Like you know, and so like you even saw it when the airport picture today. I don't know, there was it was Lambert, it was Milic, and I forget who the other guy was in that photo that the Jets kind of Bauer, right? It was Bauer, of course it was, right? Because the 3 Seattle guys, and so, but I think there's just. Again, I don't really know this because they don't actually talk about this stuff, and they. I saw that little comment. It will be Yom Kippur by the time I'm done.
Oh, I didn't realize. I didn't think you had your private chat open there, Scott.
I can see that, but no. But my point is, like, I just think that this team has learned some lessons, right? I think there's been some lessons that they've learned. And you have to give this team a bit of credit because they know how difficult it is when you lose players over the years. The Trubas, the Cops, whatever. We can name a bunch of players that have kind of departed from Winnipeg. And I just think anything that you can do to try and change their minds to keep them here is a good idea, right? This is an investment into your future as a team that struggles to bring talent in from other kind of sources other than the draft, right?
Well,
so
it costs you nothing to create a good culture.
And of course, and again, I think that's more of the thing than anything is that this culture needed to change, and I think we saw a lot of that at development camp. It might have been just a glimmer of it or whatever. Maybe we were all the wool was pulled over us, but I've been to so many of these camps now. We've covered them since 2013 or whatever. You guys have been around longer. Like, it just had a different feel about it. Exactly. And that's it's not just the players. I think the team has learned along the lines that something's got to be different. And I think that's a good sign if you're a Jets fan. That's what you want to see. You want to see some sort of progress in terms or an adaptation or whatever you want to call it. Whatever. I'm using my hands too much here, so I just lifted it over there. But I think you just want to see something as a fan. If that's the position that you're in with this team, that you know that you can kind of hitch your kind of hope to, right? Because they are going through some tough years. They have gone through some tough years. We have zero idea what this coming year is kind of look like. It's going to be kind of learn as you go type thing. But I think they reinstilled through the drafting those guys and whatever. They've reinstilled some hope that there again is this kind of pipeline of talent that is coming, and I think there's, you need to try and it's like a bridge deal, right? You kind of have to bridge to the next one. And right now, the Jets are kind of in that, we call it the mushy middle. But I think if you kind of look at it and these guys pan out the way that, some of them are, I mean, who knows what happens, right? You could be looking again at this, the younger days of the Ehlers and the Connor and the Scheifele and all that, when those guys were drafted and kind of culminated in that 2017-18 season. So I think, you can kind of see there's been a bit of a reset on how they kind of approach these things, and it's a good thing for fans. It's a good thing I think for the club too. So, and it's a good thing for us in the media because you got some good characters that they've brought in through the draft, like the Barlows and McGroartys and stuff like that too.
The fascinating experiment gets underway next week with training camp. Scott Billeck will have it covered in its entirety for the Winnipeg Sun. Scotty, as always, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your insight. Thank you for joining us this evening on this pre-recorded edition of the Illegal Curve. Chug that. I want to see the tongue before you go. I want to see if that tongue turns black based on whatever this weird Fresca style or Fanta style drink you're drinking.
I think it's getting a little darker.
Black tongue.
So, like, there's two things at the end of like the ingredients that I can't actually pronounce, other than sodium. But one's called Allura Red, and another one's called Brilliant Blue. And I assume those aren't actual ingredients in terms of like what makes it. It's the color, right? And so I think that's what they're trying to do, but I think this thing hasn't really passed the test.
It's going to be a little bit weird for when Scott's in a coma on Saturday. People are going to wonder why he's actually able to speak.
Why am I? Yeah,
Scotty, I think the ingredient that you were trying to read was motor oil. That's what's in that drink.
Hey, man, whatever keeps me lubricated, right? So this is an after-hours show, right? Anyways,
it is.
We're done. We got to get out of here because I'm going to say something that I can't go back on. So
thank you, Scotty. We'll do it again real soon. We'll see you at training camp.
Happy New Year, Scott.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Happy. Do you say happy Rosh
Hashanah? You can go Shana Tova. You can say Happy New Year. You can say, either way, whatever you want. Whatever you want to say, we'll take your wishes.
All right, cool. Do you guys have like a big is this like a boozy event too? Is this like a typical?
Very
New
few
Year's?
of our events as a people are that boozy.
Okay.
It's a lot of food
not
involved.
in synagogue like what my family does. For
example, I assume you guys don't do it like I wouldn't do it in church.
No,
right?
but like like with the Pfeffer family, my wife's family, we always do like a shot.
Okay,
like whiskey or something like that, and I'm sure that's pretty common because there's always
does about 17 after.
Yeah, that's why we're sponsored by Seagram's. I bring the Fireball, but so that's what our family does.
2 empty bottles behind Dave there.
Yeah,
there it is. Anyways, all right, I appreciate it, guys. It was always
Bye, Scotty.
fun. Hopefully none of this gets cut and this is all just like straight to air. So
that's exactly unedited,
nothing
but not commercial free,
uncensored. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Zero chance I'm editing any of this video, Scott. I'm just it's all being played.
It's actually not going to ever air. That's what's going to happen.
Oh, okay. Well, fair enough.
That works. We're just wasting your time. Is basically what it boils down to.
Thank you, Scotty. I feel like I'm wasting yours. To be honest. Anyways, hopefully the next guest is a little more succinct. So
there's no more. We're just done. There's no more next guest.
Oh, there's no more.
Over is basically what's going to happen. We're going to go to break.
Awesome.
We're going to go to break, and that'll be it.
Have a good one. Right.
Bye, Scotty.
See you guys. Yeah. Bye.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Kids eat free all September long at Boston Pizza. That's right. For the month of September, kids eat free with minimum purchase. All this for, what's that word again? Yeah, free. Boston Pizza. Hurry in.
We're back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm speaking on Thursday night. You're watching this on Saturday morning because we're pre-recording the show as we celebrate the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, as we were talking about in the previous segment with our good friend Scott Billeck. We will be back live as per normal on the 23rd of September. That
really
is
live,
next
though, Drew.
Saturday. Really live in person at Jets Fan Fest.
Yes.
So if you're heading down to FanFest, we will be broadcasting live from FanFest. Come find us at, I believe, one of the two rinks is where we're going to be doing it from. We're just trying to figure out the particulars, but Illegal Curve live at Winnipeg Jets FanFest on Saturday, the 23rd of September. So looking forward to being out in the community with Dave and with Ezzy and with the show and all of our loyal audience. Last little bit of Jets news this week, of course, focus heavily was on Adam Lowry being named captain. The other bit of news was Declan Chisholm. He was the last remaining RFA for the Winnipeg Jets, and he gets a contract. It's a 1-year, two-way deal worth $775,000 at the NHL level. I'll remind our audience that even though it is a two-way deal, that doesn't mean he doesn't have to clear waivers. He still has to clear waivers if the Jets elect to send him down to the Manitoba Moose. It just means he'll get paid at a lower salary when he plays, if he plays for the Manitoba Moose.
The Jets are not putting him on waivers, as you guys know.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't think so, but I wouldn't have thought that they would have done so last year with Johnny Kovacevic. So,
or I shouldn't say that. I mean, I don't know that. I guess let me rephrase that. I don't think that the Jets want to be in a position where they have to put him on waivers because of what you just said. Not just Johnny Kovacevic, but I think Dave should speak about Chisholm more, not just because he's talked to him, but he's watched him, and I think that you don't want to have a situation where you lose a guy that you've developed and who is on the cusp of making the NHL. The problem is, you've got Josh Morrissey, Brendan Dillon, and Dylan Sandberg ahead of him. So it's going to be tough. Could Logan Stanley be placed on waivers? Mike McIntyre mentioned that last weekend, but look,
to me, it's a no-brainer.
I'm still surprised that it took this long. Like, the Jets have about $2.5 million in cap space. I'm not sure why it took this long to sign him.
Well, there's no urgency.
I would imagine it's also I would just say I would probably imagine it was the AHL money that was involved. That was probably the sticking point. Whether it was a one-way deal versus a two-way deal, probably also something that was being negotiated. I'm not surprised that he signed. And yeah, I'm with Ez. I don't think that you're going to put him on waivers. I think you're going to lose him if you do. I know that the thought is that you could try and finagle him at a time when a lot of teams are making that move. But the reality is there's some team that's going to take a chance on a kid. Look, I know he's a 2018 fifth rounder. He was an AHL All-Star last year. He was excellent for this.
You would hope once bit, twice shy would apply to the Winnipeg Jets. I would trying to sneak a guy through waivers at this point. The young defenseman.
You're supposed to be a draft, develop, and retain. That's Kevin Cheveldayoff's own words.
Draft, develop,
on Tuesday.
Waivers.
Yeah, not draft, develop.
Let's not forget about Mikey Esimon, boys.
Yeah, but I mean, but the difference is that, again, Kovacevic is the story because the Jets could have had a guy on the right side. They decided to retain Capobianco, who obviously is a left but can play on the right side. And so my expectation would be that you would try and pass Capobianco through waivers. And again, of course, the one thing we have to take into account, there's a long training camp. There could be injuries, which could open up windows. And look, there's the Ville Heinola question that, unfortunately for him, he's waiver exempt, which, may most likely result in him being, a casualty of that circumstance because the team wants to retain Logan Stanley most likely and wants to retain Declan Chisholm and not lose them for nothing. There's always the possibility of trades, that sort of thing. But I mean, yeah, if you go based on the way things look, and as he said, you've outlined the six. We know who are going to be the six starting defensemen for the Winnipeg Jets, barring any injury, with Pionk, DeMello, and Schmidt on the right, and Morrissey and Sandberg and Dillon on the left. And then who are the two extras if you're going 8? Who are those? Well, they've got to be most likely Stanley and Chisholm. Pass Capobianco, try and pass them through waivers. And again, I just think you do that because you can't put all that effort into a player who, again, in my mind, he's as good a skater as you've got in the prospect pool from a defensive perspective. He's improved his defensive play. Offensively, he's very good. He's got great vision. And more importantly, one of the things Rick Bowness talked about in that clip, we watched it before, but it was when he was talking to Sarah, was getting more points. Well, here's a guy who thinks offensively and can help you, and he's a bigger guy. And he talked about it. He's got a confidence level. Like, that's the skill set. He said to me as he alluded to it, when we talked at the end of the season for the Moose, and I know we're contractually obligated not to do a Manuk Moose Minute because it's the preseason, so we can't do one until the season gets going. But the fact is, the kid has
also 20 minutes to 11, and I'm tired.
Yeah. The kid has the confidence to, I think, make that jump. And I just don't think you want to take a chance at losing another guy who, look at Johnny Kovacevic, 66 games. Again, draft, developed, and lost. And here's a guy who would have stayed in Winnipeg. He was happy here. He would have set down roots here. And that's, from a Jets perspective, something you're supposed to be doing with these guys. One of the things Scott just spoke about during our last conversation.
It's going to be a fascinating training camp that the Winnipeg Jets are going to be experiencing. We know the multiple layers. We know the storylines. We've been talking about them for months on end. It gets all underway next week. And of course, Fan Fest next Saturday at the Hockey for All Center, where we will be live broadcasting the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We appreciate everyone joining us. Obviously, you're watching this on Saturday. We recorded this on Thursday.
They could be watching on Sunday, Drew.
They could be watching on Sunday. They could be listening to the podcast version on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, wherever you're listening to it. It's not our typical modus operandi, but we do appreciate you tuning in to this pre-recorded edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We must say a big thank you to all of our sponsors. They sponsor the Saturday show. They sponsor the post-game show. They make the website a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, Grid Park, and more to be announced very shortly. So stay tuned for some exciting things that are in the works on that front. Support all of these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. It's been a fun Thursday evening with you guys. I must say, this isn't our typical routine, but I've enjoyed it.
It's been a real hoot, Drew.
It has been a real hoot, Ezzy. It's well past my bedtime. I'm not quite at post-game show mode yet, where I can stay up those late hours. I need to get tucked into bed.
Less than a month away, though, Drew.
I know. Less than a month away. 2 late nights in a row for me. I'm going to be I'm going to be very cranky tomorrow as a result of that. But nonetheless,
you're always cranky, Drew.
There's a little bit of truth to that as well, I suppose, Ezzy. Nonetheless, it's been an enjoyable last 90 or so minutes. We hope you, our audience, enjoys this program. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button on the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, leave us feedback on YouTube, leave us feedback on iTunes, leave us feedback wherever you may be accessing this program from. Big thanks to Scott Billeck. Big thanks to you. For Dave Minnick, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Thanks for joining us. If it's Saturday or Thursday, as the case may be, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.